So let's just get this out of the way. Wit Studio absolutely knocked it out of the park, even for their own standards that has been set with Vivi. But, like, seriously, the fight scenes and just the hand-to-hand combat, it's one thing to have, like, 10 seconds to 20 seconds of, like, really impressive, up-close and personal. Most likely a key animator came in for that specific section. But seriously, the entire battle specifically Vivi versus, okay, is this the sun? Is this a robotic body? Seemingly completely AI mind put in, and just the close quarters and the number of times that you could literally grab a screenshot that wasn't a keyframe. It was literally an in-between frame. Trust me, to grab some of these shots that I wanted to, I had to rewind multiple times to catch it in a matter of milliseconds, and the quality is insane. Matsumoto's fight versus Antonio, also really impressive in its own way with the technological aspects of the glowings and the number of special effects. You have ridiculous, up close and personal, realistic looking fighting, and then you have robotic craziness, and it's all incredibly well done. But even with all that said, that's not what makes Vivi such a great show. It's this time travel story, and one of the biggest questions that people always had was what was Matsumoto's true intentions. And back in the day, back in the early stages, I said it would be a little too predictable if Matsumoto turned out to be evil. Mainly because that's what people assume. When you have any sort of like story where an AI is trying to quote-unquote save the world, it usually isn't that. And over the weeks, I've definitely questioned my thought process that, okay, maybe Wit Studio actually is going this direction, that it is going to be Matsumoto's evil, but they'll do something to make it compelling. I was originally thinking it would be an Antonio-style twist, right? There'd be something good and it would work. But my initial gut reaction, and over the weeks I've said it over multiple videos, that I didn't think Matsumoto would turn out to be evil, and I had some people really push back against that thought, and I gotta admit, I feel pretty good coming out of this episode seeing that Matsumoto literally cares for Vivi as a partner, and while he definitely did come close to Antonio on more than one occasion, he's glad that he stuck by Vivi through and through. And that was so satisfying. There's a lot of things that have caused disruptions in the flow of time. I mean, one of the biggest was the fact work with Antonio, and that threw everything for a loop. And seemingly he was told about this 40 years in the past. So there's definitely another player trying to manipulate things and doing things for wrong intentions. But that character is definitely not Matsumoto. I think most people were pretty much agreeing with that after last week's episode. There's no reason for him to care about Diva, aka Vivi, this much, unless he truly is a good person with good intentions, or a good robot with good intentions. And this episode was all about the vindication of Matsumoto's character, and saying that even though we only have 4 episodes left to go in this show, it feels like now that everyone's kind of on the same page, Diva is no longer. The only one left after the erasing is Vivi herself. And while she definitely doesn't understand what it means to put your heart into it and how to truly sing to an audience like Diva was, it's going to be really interesting to see what the final arc will have in store. I mean, everything is pointing to Vivi ending up dead. Every single one of the sisters have ended up dead, and it would make total sense that she would. But given how they keep breaking away from the trends that other sci-fi robotic series have done, even when you see comparisons like, oh, this reminds me of Nier, ultimately, this is Vivi. This is Vivi as a story, and I think that's what makes it so compelling, is that even if the action sequences weren't as good as they were, like, let's just say, downgrade the quality by 50%. Sure, it may not have as much buzz as it has now, but the core people who have been watching it for more than fight scenes would still agree that Vivi is close to a masterpiece. The only thing we might want to see improved is the quality. But by already having the quality match the story writing, like, everything just feels perfect. This was all about an episode to see what is the purpose of, like, one's dream and vision. And for someone who has very much been pushing it back against Vivi and seemingly cared about his piano teacher, I thought his reason for seemingly hating AIs and the advancement of it was kind of interesting. It went in a direction I didn't see coming. So when AIs get killed, they bury them like a human, but they expose their final moments in a way that on one hand you might be able to say, well, in this case, it was brave, look at how far he'd come, but for those who really love that person, or AI, depending on how you want to look at it, it's basically just highlighting how they died, and would anyone want to see, like, a video playing? Imagine this, closest loved one, they rescued someone from a car, they saved that person's life, and then they blew up. Would you really want that video painted above their casket? Maybe edited? No, like, even that, no. Just, like, put a a slate of newspaper up there saying that they were a hero. Don't glorify it. So on one hand, humanity treats them as people, but on the other hand, they are treating them like an object of display. So I can understand this man's hatred a lot more, and I thought it was going to be questionable to see, like, what I and other viewers would probably assume of this man's kind of idea and hatred, but I think they did a really good job. And it's interesting how he pretty much ends up kind of passing the virus along so that she would remember who she was. And I think it's going to serve as a pretty good importance for the final arc of this story. Now, Antonio's an interesting wild card. I mean, the whole idea that essentially he felt like she wasn't living up to par, and he made this whole elaborate lie of why he basically killed Ophelia and why he was going to do it for a second time. But the fact that he simply, he was going off against his own programming, he was pretty much becoming a person, and he wanted her to only sing for him, and she only wanted to sing for him. So it became this kind of like Romeo and Juliet almost style love story, whereas something that was never meant to be because both of them were trying to please the other, but not knowing what the other truly wanted all along. And to see like the parting final moments, I mean, even though I came to terms with it, I was like, Ophelia's gonna die, I still felt like I came out not as sad as maybe past death, because I feel like even though it did end, at the very least these two really were able to say their true feelings before they ended. So on one hand, it sucks. On the other hand, it's kind of peaceful in its own right. The fight scene was incredible, like I previously mentioned. I like the idea of almost having like Minesweeper on the floor, where you're trying to tiptoe around the landmines on the floor as you're having, constantly, like if you touch it, you pretty much grow corrupt, so you have to replace the body part as you're simultaneously trying to help your partner. And I think it's a good contrast to show, like, this is what Matsumoto could have become. He could have become Antonio, and that's what people thought he would become. And I'm not sure if it was intentional all along that, the writers knew that most likely people are going to doubt in Matsumoto for the most part from the beginning. But we're going to show what Matsumoto could have become later towards the end of the story, but hopefully people will be satisfied that he's not actually a traitorous bastard. I feel like given how the story's been written, I would be shocked if it wasn't intentional to sort of make Matsumoto seem a little shady. But even if it wasn't intentional, it's a happy accident, all things considered. And just the quality, the sound effects, from the screeching of the voices shutting down to the explosions to the impacts of the punches. Like, on one hand, it looks like humans fighting. On the other hand, when they get impaled, it feels like robotics getting absolutely slammed. And then at some points, it reminds me of Inuyashiki, where you have that old man transforming into a giant cannon, but you have it on this man here. Absolutely incredible. It just felt like this was rewarding, as if patience is key. We blew you away week after week, but we're showing you something a lot bigger, and now we're going to enter the end game. What is truly going on? What is the last obstacle? What's trying to push back against Vivi as well as Matsumoto? And what does the man who sent Matsumoto on his mission have to do with something probably even larger? Incredible episode, I would argue 10 out of 10, but then again, has it really been an episode that hasn't felt like absolutely perfect quality? Even if you wanted something a little extra, I mean, from the visual production to the sound design to the amazing voice acting to the plot twist. I mean, it was a big enough plot twist towards the end of last week's episode. I think it's an even bigger plot twist just to see like the whole idea of both Ophelia and Antonio's kind of dreams, and the clarification that Matsumoto truly isn't a bad person. Now at this point, if they actually infect Matsumoto with a virus and turn him evil, that will be more unexpected, all things considered, but I mean, it kind of feels like Matsumoto naturally will be the one to survive, Vivi will lose, but I think it'd be an interesting twist if Matsumoto gave his life so Vivi could survive. That would be a pretty cool one as well. But let me know your thoughts and feelings on this emotionally draining but action-packed episode of Vivi, and where do you think it's going to go with episodes 10 through 13, with most likely the final arc, as I imagine it will be one big, long final arc. I doubt there will be two of them, but then again, the show's unpredictable. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you're happy new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.